A doctor walked onto the America's Got Talent stage and said, "I need to explain why we're here." Simon Cowell stood up from the judge's desk. The lights were bright. The audience was buzzing with anticipation. Another audition. Another act. The familiar rhythm of America's Got Talent. Performers stepping into the spotlight, judges offering opinions, dreams either validated or gently redirected. Host Terry Crews stood center stage with his usual energy. "All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next act is a little different tonight. Please welcome Dr. Marcus Rivera and his patient, 12-year-old Daniel Hoffman." The audience applauded politely, but confusion rippled through the theater. A doctor? On a talent show? Dr. Rivera walked onto the stage first, a man in his 50s, wearing dress slacks and a button-down shirt, no white coat but carrying the unmistakable bearing of a medical professional. Behind him walked Daniel, a slight 12-year-old boy with large eyes and a nervous smile. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair at the judge's desk, arms crossed, that familiar expression of skeptical curiosity on his face. Howie Mandel glanced at Heidi Klum, who shrugged slightly. Sofia Vergara leaned forward, intrigued. Terry approached them with a microphone. "Dr. Rivera, welcome to AGT. This is unusual. Can you tell us what brings you and Daniel here today?" Dr. Rivera took the microphone, his expression serious. "Thank you for having us. Before Daniel performs, I need to explain something to everyone watching, both here in the theater and at home. Because what you're about to witness isn't just a performance. It's a medical miracle." The theater went quiet. Simon uncrossed his arms, sitting forward slightly. His expression shifted from skeptical to genuinely curious. Simon Cowell has watched thousands of talents over the years, but none of them started like this. A doctor stepped on stage and said, "I need to explain why we're here." And Simon stood up from the judge's desk. Dr. Rivera continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. 18 months ago, Daniel was in a catastrophic car accident. He suffered severe traumatic brain injury. The kind of injury that, statistically, leads to permanent disability or worse. We didn't know if he would survive the first 72 hours. The audience gasped. Several people covered their mouths. Daniel stood quietly beside the doctor, looking down at his feet. Daniel was in a coma for 3 weeks, Dr. Rivera said. When he woke up, he couldn't speak. Couldn't walk. Couldn't recognize his own parents. We had to teach him everything again from the beginning. How to swallow, how to sit up, how to say his own name. Simon's jaw tightened. He placed both hands on the judge's desk, leaning forward, his full attention locked on the doctor. The rehabilitation process has been. Dr. Rivera paused, choosing his words carefully. Extraordinary. Daniel has worked harder than any patient I've seen in 25 years of neurology. But there was one thing we couldn't get back. One ability that seemed permanently lost. He gestured to Daniel, who finally looked up, meeting the doctor's eyes with trust. Daniel was a singer before the accident. He loved music. He sang in his school choir, performed at every family gathering, dreamed of being on this stage one day. But after the brain injury, he couldn't carry a tune. Couldn't remember lyrics. The part of his brain that processed music had been severely damaged. We told his family that of all the abilities he might recover, singing was the least likely. The theater was completely silent now. Even the camera operators had stopped moving. Dr. Rivera's voice cracked slightly. 2 months ago, Daniel's mother heard him humming in his room. Just a simple melody. But it was the first musical sound he'd made since before the accident. And then, 3 weeks ago, he sang an entire song. Perfectly. Like his brain had found a new pathway around the damage. Simon Cowell stood up. Not the casual standing he sometimes did during performances. This was deliberate. He rose from his chair, placed one hand on the desk for support, and raised his other hand slightly. The universal gesture for wait, for attention, for this matters. Hold on, Simon said, his voice cutting through the theater. Hold on. Everyone needs to hear this. Everyone needs to understand what we're witnessing. Dr. Rivera nodded, grateful. Simon looked at the audience, then directly into camera one. What this doctor is telling us is that this boy, Daniel, shouldn't be able to do what he's about to do. His brain was so damaged that singing should be impossible. And yet here he is. That's not just a performance we're about to see. That's neuroplasticity in action. That's the human brain rewriting itself. That's a miracle. He looked back at Daniel, who was now staring at Simon with wide eyes, clearly not expecting this reaction. Daniel, Simon said gently, before you sing, I want you to know something. You've already won. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, you've already achieved something extraordinary. Do you understand? Daniel nodded, his eyes filling with tears. Simon stopped the show. No one knew what was happening. To understand what happened next, you need to understand Daniel's journey. And more importantly, you need to understand what Dr. Marcus Rivera had risked by bringing him here. 18 months ago, Daniel Hoffman was a normal 12-year-old kid living in Phoenix, Arizona. He loved soccer, video games, and singing. Especially singing. His voice was clear and pure, the kind of voice that made music teachers stop and take notice. His school choir director had already told his parents that with training, Daniel could have a real future in music. On March 14th, Daniel and his mother were driving home from choir practice. A drunk driver ran a red light at 60 miles per hour and hit them on the passenger side. Daniel's mother survived with minor injuries. Daniel suffered a severe traumatic brain injury when his head struck the door frame with catastrophic force. He was airlifted to Phoenix Children's Hospital where Dr. Marcus Rivera, one of the leading pediatric neurologists in the Southwest, took over his case. The CT scan showed massive swelling, bleeding in multiple brain regions, and damage to the temporal lobe, the area that processes sound, music, and language. Dr. Rivera gave the family the statistics. 70% chance Daniel would never regain consciousness. If he did wake up, 90% chance of permanent severe disability. The ability to speak again, maybe 30%. The ability to walk, 20%. The ability to sing? I told them it was essentially zero, Dr. Rivera would later admit. The damage to his auditory processing centers was too extensive. I've seen patients recover many abilities, but music is one of the most complex cognitive functions. When it's gone, it's usually gone forever. Daniel spent 3 weeks in a coma. His parents took turns sitting beside his bed, playing recordings of his choir performances, hoping somehow the music would reach him. Dr. Rivera told them it was a kind gesture but unlikely to make any difference. On April 7th, Daniel opened his eyes. The recovery was slow and painful. He had to relearn everything. At first, he couldn't speak at all, just sounds, grunts, attempts at words that came out garbled. Physical therapists worked with him for months before he could walk without assistance. Occupational therapists taught him how to feed himself again, how to write, how to exist in a body that no longer responded the way his brain expected. Throughout all of this, his parents continued playing music. Daniel would listen with a blank expression, showing no recognition, no emotional response. Dr. Rivera gently suggested they might want to accept that music was part of Daniel's past, not his future. But Daniel's mother refused to give up. She played his old choir recordings every night while he slept. She sang to him during therapy sessions. She put headphones on him with his favorite songs, even though he showed no reaction. Months passed. Daniel improved in other areas. He could walk again, talk in simple sentences, recognize his family. But music remained a mystery his brain couldn't solve. When therapists tested his ability to match pitch, he couldn't do it. When they played simple melodies and asked him to repeat them, he couldn't. The neural pathways that had once made him a singer were gone, replaced by scar tissue and scrambled connections. Dr. Rivera prepared to close Daniel's case. He'd made remarkable progress in other areas. Sometimes you had to accept limitations. Then, 14 months after the accident, Daniel's mother called Dr. Rivera at 11 p.m. She was crying so hard he could barely understand her. "He's humming," she said. "Marcus, he's humming. I heard him in his room. He's humming the melody from his choir concert. The one from before the accident." Dr. Rivera drove to their house immediately. He found Daniel sitting on his bed, humming softly, a simple melody, slightly off-key, but unmistakably musical. The boy didn't even seem aware he was doing it. "It's impossible," Dr. Rivera whispered, watching from the doorway. "The scan showed this shouldn't be possible. But the human brain doesn't always follow the rules doctors write." Over the next 2 months, Daniel's musical ability returned in fragments. First humming. Then singing simple melodies with vowel sounds. Then, gradually, actual lyrics. His voice was different than before, less smooth, occasionally breaking on high notes. But it was there. The music had found a way back. Dr. Rivera ran new scans. Daniel's brain had literally rewired itself. New neural pathways had formed, routing around the damaged areas, creating fresh connections that somehow, miraculously, could process music again. It was one of the most dramatic examples of neuroplasticity Dr. Rivera had ever documented. "We need to share this," Dr. Rivera told Daniel's parents. "This needs to be studied, published, understood. This could change how we approach brain injury rehabilitation." Daniel's mother had a different idea. He wanted to audition for America's Got Talent before the accident. He talked about it all the time. If his brain can sing again, that's where he should do it. Not in a medical journal. On that stage. Where he always dreamed of being. Dr. Rivera hesitated. It was risky. Daniel was still recovering. The pressure of a television audition could be overwhelming. But looking at Daniel's face when his mother mentioned AGT, the sudden spark of recognition, of desire, of that childhood dream still alive despite everything, Dr. Rivera agreed. Which is how they ended up here. On the America's Got Talent stage. With Dr. Rivera explaining to millions of viewers why what they were about to witness mattered. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this performance is still ahead. Simon remained standing at the judge's desk. The other judges had also risen to their feet now, understanding that this transcended normal audition protocol. The audience was completely silent, 300 people barely breathing. Terry Crews, usually the master of energy and enthusiasm, spoke quietly. "Daniel, what are you going to sing for us today?" Daniel took the microphone with trembling hands. When he spoke, his words came slowly, carefully, the speech pattern of someone who'd had to relearn how to talk. "I'm going to sing. You Raise Me Up." It was the song my choir was practicing the day of the accident. I never got to perform it. Because he stopped, collecting himself. Because I forgot how to sing. His voice broke on the last word. His mother, sitting in the audience front row, was openly crying. Simon walked to the edge of the stage, looking up at Daniel. "Sing it for everyone who told you that you couldn't," Simon said quietly. "Sing it for your mother. Sing it for Dr. Rivera. But most importantly, Daniel, sing it for yourself." The music started. Daniel closed his eyes. And then he sang. His voice filled the theater, imperfect, occasionally breaking, but achingly beautiful. Every note a miracle. Every word a victory over impossible odds. The lyrics about being raised up from the depths had never meant more. Simon stood at the edge of the stage with tears streaming down his face. The other judges were crying. The audience was crying. Dr. Rivera stood beside Daniel, his hand on the boy's shoulder, witnessing the culmination of 18 months of impossible recovery. When Daniel finished, the theater exploded. Standing ovation. Screaming. Sobbing. Simon walked directly to the golden buzzer and slammed his hand down without a word. Golden confetti fell like rain. Share and subscribe, so this story will never be forgotten. After the show, Simon arranged for Daniel's medical journey to be documented and shared with rehabilitation centers worldwide. Dr. Rivera's research on Daniel's neuroplasticity became required reading in neurology programs. Daniel went on to perform in the AGT finals. He didn't win. But that wasn't the point. The point was that he sang it all. Today, Daniel mentors other brain injury survivors. He tells them, "Your brain is more powerful than any doctor's prognosis." And Simon Cowell says at audition, the day a doctor explained why a moment mattered, changed how he judges every act that follows. Some performances are about talent. This one was about the human spirit refusing to accept impossible.